Now, good evening, Minister Teixeira.
Evening.
The budget debate continues with the estimates.
Yes.
This morning, certain comments were made as it relates to the payment of the project manager. Now, Mr. Marlon Bristol's name is mentioned in a statement by the opposition leader, who is claiming is receiving half the amount of money that the new project manager is receiving, who was receiving half the amount of money. Do you have any response to that?
Well, there are a number of things I want to respond to, which Mr. Harman stated in a press statement, apparently, after we had finished this, going through the estimates of the Ministry of the Presidency and the Office of the President. First of all, I never called anybody's name. And so under the particular estimate that we were looking at, the agency, I was asked a question, and I said that that amount of money covered a person who was receiving 6,000 odd US per month. That is true. I didn't name the person, and I don't know where Mr. Harman takes the liberty of naming the person. He also goes on to say that this is foreign funding. It's not. The money is coming out. The 6,000 US is not foreign funded. The fund, the source of funding does not cover the salary of the person who I spoke of. And so the equivalent of 6,000 plus, I think it's 6,800 US, is paid directly from the Office of the President budget. That's taxpayers' money. So I don't wish to go into a long discussion on what he said. I think that he jumped the gun and he is on a wrong footing. And any record of Parliament debate would show that I didn't call anybody's name in terms of contracted workers. The second thing is that Mr. Harman makes a number of accusations about the budget and conspiring or to getting people, he said, to devise a strategy to get government people to ask questions. This is a budget debate. Any member of Parliament on either side of the House have a right to raise questions. This is about transparency and accountability. This is money that January to July was spent with no parliamentary cover because there was no budget. The August to September is based on projections, and October to December is a request. So it's an unusual situation you're in, but not one that has never happened before. In 2015, after the May elections, the budget was debated in August 2015. And again, because that government had also switched some of the ministries around, they also had this kind of division of the period up to when the government changed and subsequently afterwards. I don't need to devise a strategy for my MPs. MPs had an interest to know what money was used because I was dealing with January to July and August to September with Ministry of the Presidency and Office of the President for October to December. So if the opposition members do not feel the necessity to ask questions about the period from January up to September, that's not my problem. I have MPs who wanted to ask questions. And clearly out of some of the questions came issues that I think are important to the Guyanese people. They need to know how money was used, especially in a period where you haven't had Parliament from May 2019 to now. It is now September. And so the issue that came out this morning was the fact that birth certificates were purchased, 150,000, by a person, by a company that had an address in Florida, whose principal is, and I named that person. That I did because I have the contract signed by that person in front of me, which said it was Mr. London, Larry London, who we know his names keep popping up all the time. And so I named that, and I also referred to the Canadian banknote in terms of passports. And this was a large sum of money that had been expended in 2019. And now, for example, we discover that the company, a so-called company in Florida, which Mr. London's name is on, the address is actually his home address in Florida. So this stinks. And the fact is that a number of the shipments, in fact, when you go through there are approximately 200,000 US dollars worth of birth certificates that were purchased or under this company's name. That, I mean, 200,000 US is a lot of money for birth certificates. And we used to print them here in Guyana. They used to be printed here with watermarks and security features. I don't know what is the special security feature of these ones that Mr. London did, and I don't understand what was the change with it. But the fact that this large quantity of birth certificates came in and have come in up to January this year is rather interesting. And the fact that this was single source. There was no tender for this at all. The Canadian banknote one is the passports was for a specific amount and also for a large amount for what they called maintenance. Mm-hmm. Now, we have to investigate based on our findings. There are going to have to be investigations of a number of the procurement practices we found. Now, I understand why APNU, AFC, Mr. Harman et al. Didn't want to ask questions about the Ministry of the Presidency. And so, but our MPs have a right to ask. There's nothing to stop this, asking questions. And so, in the interest of the public needs to know what we're doing in here. And so when you have issues of $700 million being spent under citizenship and 600 million worth of goods haven't come in the country up to now, one has a right to ask questions. When you have birth certificates being produced under citizenship by a company of a person who also works in Office of the President, this asks questions. And so I have no apologies to make to Mr. Harman or to anybody else that what we have found requires investigation. And if it's the Auditor General is the one, or it has to have a special investigation, there's certain things in preparing for this that disturb me and have disturbed our side. And as I said, I am repeating what I said, and I understand why Mr. Harman didn't want certain questions to be asked. When we came to Office of the President, of course, they have a right to ask questions. This is October to December. What was interesting is that some of the questions became absolutely banal. How do you have a discussion on a budget that is over $300 billion, and you have an MP on the other side reducing it to how much the toilet costs under one capital project and exactly which building the toilet was going to be put in? This is reducing Parliament into a joke, an absolute joke. And therefore, I think APNU AFC has to pull up their MPs and behave in a responsible manner and be serious. We're talking about serious money, not about these absurd and piddly things. So Mr. Harman can be upset as much as he likes, but we have this week where we have to know what happened to money in January, July. The projections of August, September, they have a right to be concerned, and obviously October, December. And we will continue on that trend as things come up and as questions are asked, we'll answer them to the best of our ability. That's our job here as MPs, not to pretend that we're not going to ask a question because we don't embarrass anybody. That's not how it's going to be in this Parliament. All right?
Sure.
Thank you very much.